Hey everyone, it's Kabir here. In today's session, we are going to understand about state. But before starting the session, I would like to say, if you like this content, don't forget to like, subscribe and share the channel. So let's begin with today's session. In today's session, we are going to understand the concept called state in Reactjs. What is state? A state is like a container for your component, and this container is going to contain some data, like some data we are going to store in this container, and that container is nothing but your state. So they gave a appropriate naming for that particular container known as a state. Technically, a state is nothing but one object. Okay, and in React world we are going to call that object as a state. So that state is going to contain some data, and that state will be private for your component. So whenever your component requires some data, that data we are going to access from the state. So let us see diagrammatically. Just consider this is your application. Just consider like this is your React application. Okay, this is your React application, which is going to this is, let's give the naming for that, React application. Right, now this application is going to contain some components, right? So let us consider this is one of the component. Now this component will have some state, right? Means it will have one container, right? So let's represent this everything. This is your component, right? So let's going to write something, and just let's change it to 18. Yeah, this is your component, right? And this component is going to contain some kind of state, means some one type of container, and this container is called state in your React world, which is going to contain some data, right? And technically this container is nothing but one object. So we will have this is nothing but one object. I can write here only, right? It's better, an object, right? Now this object is going to contain some data. Fine. Now what is state? State is like a container for your state is a container for your component. Now whenever your component requires some data, that data we are going to access from the state, from this container. And this container technically one object, so we are going to store some data in this container. So if we are storing some data in this container, means the data format will be in the like key value pair format, means we are going to store the data in key value format. Now whenever we require this data, we are going to access the data from this particular object. So how can we access any data from your object name dot the key of that particular property. So this is the concept of state, very simple concept. Okay, now let's go to our VS code. Let's see programmatically what it means. So we have like created last session one application like task1. So we will be utilizing the same application. Now we have here one component folder inside your src folder. So I'm going to create one component, but one thing you guys have to remember that state can be implemented only in class based component. We cannot implement state in your functional component. The first point you have to remember. If you want to implement state in your functional functional component, you have another concept known as hooks, which we are going to see in the further sessions. So as of now you have to remember, whenever you wanted to utilize the state concept, then you have to create a component in the class based way. So let's create a component which is a class based component. So inside your component, I'm going to create one file known as let's make you like state component name.js. Okay, so first statement will be import react from React Cool. Now I have to create a component, but state can be created only class-based component. So let us create a class-based component. How can we create class? Your component name, I'm giving something like state comp, which is going to extends from your component class, react dot component class. So it's capital C component, right? Now this is your class. Now whenever you are going to create a class-based component, you have to override one method. That method is render. Okay, I have overwritten the render method. This render method is going to return some kind of UI. What UI we will be creating here. Okay, now this is a class-based component, it will take one constructor. Okay, I have took one constructor. In your constructor, always the first statement should be super method you have to call. Super method is nothing but it is going to call the parent constructor. Who is the parent constructor for this component? Your component class. You have a class whose name is component, which is predefined class, means the class has been developed by the React people. In this class contain one of the method called render, right? Now we have to override this particular render method. So this is the rule that we have to follow, right? So whenever we are going to create a component, we have to export it. So how can we export? Export default your component name, state component. That's pretty cool. Now in functional component, we are going to pass one input known as props. How we are passing? As a parameter. Here we have to pass in the same way in class-based component. If you want to pass some input as a props, you have to pass in constructor. So this is the props. Okay, now in super also I have to pass the props. Done. Now here I wanted to define one object inside a constructor. How can I create a variable like this dot some name, like here I'm giving state equals to one object. This state is nothing but your container, which is going to contain some data, and this data you can utilize in your component. Okay, now as of now we don't have anything. Why we are using this keyword? This keyword represent your present class. Your present class is state component. So we are telling that in present class I am creating a object known as state. Okay, in React world, this object which contains some data is called a state. How some input is called props, in same way this is called state, and this will be local, like private for this particular component. Now this is the object, so it is going to contain some data. How the data will be? In your key value format. So let's represent one something like person details, like name. I'm going to give something like Kabir. Next we have email. Email would be something like kabir@gmail.com. We have one more property, like we have phone number something. So we have something. Okay, it's not my phone number, I'm just randomly printing, don't call. Okay, and next we have location. So I'm going to take LOC and it will be like Mumbai Mirjan. So we have created one state object where it contains some data. This data I wanted to like present in my this component. So to present this data in my component, I have to create a UI. So in class-based component, we can create a UI inside a render method, right? Okay, so here I am taking one div, and in last session we have created a card using the some CSS. So let's take that particular CSS. So I'm going to give some designing to this div, like class name equals to something like card. We have the card. So this we have to first import that particular CSS file. So just import it. Import in your CSS Yeah, this is css file.css. Okay, now here I want to represent like h3. We are going to represent the data. I want to represent name, like I am going to take 4h, like yeah, 4 h3 tags, 1 2 3. Now here I want to present the name, so how can I do name? Okay, now I want to like access the data which is present in state. So for that we have to give one expression. This expression is JavaScript expression. Here I want to represent the name. So how can I represent? Now it is present inside one object, one state. State is nothing but object. How can you access a particular data from an object? We have already seen. First, this means in this class we have an object named state. In that I have a key name. Yeah, this is what the way we represent. In the same way I want to represent here email, right? Some email ID. So how can same here, same process, this dot, in this class I have variable state dot email. The key of that particular is email. In the same way we have to write another two here also. What I wanted to represent, I wanted to represent contact number, right? So how can we represent? Using something like this. Normally it is called interpolation, but let's see this in future sessions, like this dot state dot and your phone number, right? We have one more. Here I want to represent the location, right? Location. So how can we represent the location? In the same way. So here I will be telling something like this dot state dot loc key. So that's why I took the session on JSON object, how to access, how to delete, how to add, all that operations, because we are going to use that extensively in our series. So this is the state, right? Now just save it and just go to your particular app.js. So first of all we have to import. How do we have to import? Import state comp something name reference from, you have to give the location. It's side component, it's a state comp. That's cool. And we have to use here. So how can we use state comp? Okay, now just go here. Did we give? Yeah, everything is cool, right? Just save it, just right. So we have give some wrong name, right? I think React, it's a React. Save it. Okay, now just go to your browser. So before that, let's create once again. Let's delete this one. So go to your terminal. Right? Yeah, here what we have to write the command to execute npm start, enter. So let's go to our browser. So now your output is going to come. Yeah, so we have defined this thing is nothing but your state. So let's see, let's do some changes. Just go to your index.css, just give you some color, like color would be text color with the white, something like some white smoke, something, whatever you can give. So it will look a little bit better. Yes. Now we are able to display the data which is present in your particular state object. From there we are able to display that particular data in your component. So this is the concept of component. Component is like a container which will be private for your component. You will be storing some data in that object, that state object, and that data will be present in the format of key value pair. Now whenever you wanted some data or whole data from that state to represent in your component, we are going to access from here. It will be like a local, it will be private for that particular state, particular component. So this is the concept of the state. In next video, we are going to see what are the props. How can we pass a data from one component to another component, right? So let's bye. Thank you.